Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Kenka Bancho, Badass Rumble. This is one of the so-claimed hidden gems of the PSP library, and to tell you the truth, up to now, I never really had the opportunity to go and play it more than a couple of minutes at a time just because I was always busy with Vita stuff or what have you. But now that the Vita's wound down a bit, I was finally able to come check it out, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, can't find very many reasons to like it at all. But before I get into the reasons as to why, let's talk about the overall premise. So the premise is that you're a Bancho. You're the strongest person in your district of Japan in the form of like bloody delinquents that fight in schools because they do that. So you find yourself on your senior school trip, and every single district of Japan has found themselves also taking their school trips to the exact same city. So now all the Banchos of all the districts of Japan have ended up in the same city, and you've got a week to track them all down and beat the crap out of all of them to prove yourself the superior Bancho of Japan. And frankly, this is a pretty damn cool concept, and it almost manages to back it up with some cool themings to it. So you do have the ability to walk around and stare people down in order to actually fight them. But if you stare them down, if you stare down the wrong person, or if you stare down someone who's weaker than you, they'll fall flat on their ass. It's actually pretty funny. But outside of this entire prospect of tracking down Banchos and beating the crap out of them, there's very little else to do in the actual game. Even the overall main story seems to want to take a back seat. So the way this game works is that it's split into 2 times a day. You've got AM and you've got PM. And during the, well, I say AM and PM, but I mean morning and afternoon, although it goes to afternoon at like 1 o'clock or something like that. So in the morning, you're not so much forced to go along with the school group in order to engage in the main story. You do have the option to ditch it after the first day, but I went along with it every single day just to see what it was like, and it's honestly not very good. The cutscenes are relatively short, they've got very little in the way of text to actually express themselves, and all the characters end up coming off really one-dimensional as a result. Like, you just end up looking like the guy who wants to fight everything, although admittedly your character gets a little bit of a boost by the fact that you've got to stand by a code of conduct, including not fighting innocent people, not fighting people with weapons, not grabbing people from behind, not doing things like attacking people who haven't agreed to fight you yet. Things along those lines, right? So in the gameplay, it makes you look like a better person, but it doesn't really help out too much in the main story as well. And everybody else just comes off as a one-dimensional stereotype. The childhood friend who's in love with you. The other guy who wants to steal the childhood friend from you. The principal who is your just general tight ass. The one guy who just comes out of nowhere, like the guy in the Pokemon gyms that just helps you out for no particular reason other than he likes the look of you. And that's basically it for the main story. I'm not interested in the slightest. There's basically nothing going on. Which leaves us with nothing but tracking down and finding Banchos. So here's how you track down Banchos. You go and you fight people on the street. They're usually wearing school uniforms, and you got to stare them down first. If they stare back at you, that's an invitation for a fight. You start fighting them. You beat the crap out of them, and they drop an itinerary. This itinerary tells you at what section of the day and what day that a particular Bancho will be available to fight, in what particular location. And once you've done that, you go to that location on that day at that time, you fight that Bancho, and you do that with every other Bancho in the game, and you win, basically. However, there are a fair few things getting in the way of this. Number one being the way that you find the itineraries. You fight people in the street, but they actually have a chance to drop nothing, or they'll drop an item. They won't actually drop an itinerary. Sometimes the game makes it easier to tell which ones you need to look at in order to actively like find the itineraries, because they'll be wearing different uniforms. But sometimes you'll just have no luck. You'll be wandering around for an hour beating the crap out of random school children on the street and not getting any itineraries from them. And as a result, it feels like you've just wasted time. And at the beginning of the game, you're more likely to wander and just stumble upon random Bancho in the street. You'll wander into an area, you'll find the blue circle determining that's them, and you will just be able to go and fight them. So it's actually kind of frustrating because you waste a lot of time going around trying to fight all of them, and you just end up feel like what's wasting an hour beating the crap out of random people in the street. And it really isn't helped by the fact that the combat is not very good. So you have a 3-hit combo and a finisher. You have the ability to grab people and do a bunch of different things from there. You have the ability to pin someone down and beat the crap out of them. And that's basically it. But the main problem with the way the combat works is the animations. Everything is so incredibly stiff and just generally inflexible that it makes the combat feel more like a chore than it does something a bit more enjoyable. Like, I was thinking of Yakuza constantly throughout this, because dodging is really easy, getting all your different moves off is really easy, the heat moves add a little bit of extra dimensions to the combat, but not much, and the upgradability of the movesets in the Yakuza games means that you'll feel like you're unlocking new moves and new strategies on the way as you go. This game works a little bit differently. You can swap out pretty much every move that you've got in your entire moveset with moves that you learn as you level up. But the problem is, every single one of them feels about as stiff and inflexible as the other. So the combat just feels like a poorly tuned slog, where you're moving really slowly, you're attacking really slowly, and everything just feels like 10 to 20% slower than it should be. It's also not helped out by the fact that you level up really slowly too. You only get like 2 points to use every single stat. Every single level up, and every single stat has like a maximum of like 100 or something. It's ridiculously high. And the moves that you learn, while it might be fun to swap out moves and make a move style that at least looks cool, they're all affected by the fact that they've all got their own attack levels. So you find yourself in a position where you'll be using a really stupid looking moveset because it does more damage, or because the animation ends quicker so you don't have to deal with the overall stiffness of the combat. And as a result, the combat just isn't really that much fun. And it's really not helped out by the fact that the AI is stupid. There is very little the AI can do to stop you from just rolling over them when you're fighting them one-on-one. All you need to do for the Banchos, which are almost always one-on-one fights, is walk up to them, hit square 3 times, hit triangle, they fall down, they get up, they might try and attack, but it's easy to see it coming and move out of the way. And then just go back to hitting square, 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 triangle on them over and over and over again. They've got no way to get out of a combo once they're in it. They've got no way to dodge out of the way much more than once. And they've got no way to just generally fight back against that. The only way that the game can really see to make a challenge for you is to throw multiple enemies at you at once who can immediately hit you just as you've gotten up and are able to maintain control again. And it just makes the combat that much more frustrating. So you end up in this position where you're just getting the crap beat out of you by 5 enemies and you're just constantly spamming that one AoE special attack that you need to get out of trouble. And that's all there is to it. So fighting Banchos isn't that fun. Beating Banchos isn't that fun. The story isn't particularly great. You might be wondering what else there is to like, and honestly, there's barely anything else in the game to do. Outside of tracking down itineraries, fighting Banchos, and doing the main story, there's nothing else. There's no side quests, there's no activities, there's no mini-games. There's like one quest where every single area that you can go to in the city has like a flag on the wall that you can stare down and look at in order to collect it for your hotel room. And there are these little packages out in the world that can give you a bunch of money, and we'll get to how that can break the game's balance shortly. But outside of that, there's basically nothing else to do. And now that the footage has come to it, I can tell you about smash talking, which is also a pain in the ass. You've got to pick 3 responses in order to get the first hit in the battle, which really doesn't help much because it doesn't do that much damage. But normally this is just a pain, because you can go for the default one, which is guaranteed, but is just relatively slow. Or you can try and make it a little bit of a challenge for you by looking for the special challenge, the special one that they've got set up in there, which the game doesn't tell you about, but you can usually guess by putting together 3 different words. Unfortunately, this only does slightly more damage, which means that it's a bit of wasted effort. Enemies drop money and items for you. The items are pretty simple too, nothing particularly special. Increase your stats for a limited time, recover your max HP because it goes down over time, recover your actual HP, recover your ki, which you need for your special attack and what have you. And then you've got your taxi tickets, which allow you to get anywhere in the city. It costs a lot of money, but it's the quickest way to travel. You can also go by foot, which is the slowest. You can go by bus, which is the second slowest, but takes a fair amount. It doesn't take that much money. Or you can go by the subway, which doesn't have many stops, but is about as fast as the taxi. Which you might think this would actually worry your money count, having to worry about all these items and traveling around the city quickly and all that. But you can find so much money strewn about the city and on the corpses of your defeated schoolmates, or should I say school rivals, that it doesn't really matter. I'd have over 100,000 yen, which doesn't sound like much, but it's enough to get you anywhere in the city like 10 times over. The only reason I'm not that rich is because I decided to have a look at the visual customization, of which there's a relatively decent amount, but the only actual benefit it brings you in gameplay is increasing the amount of items you can hold. But considering the fact that you already start out with an outfit that has the maximum amount of items you can hold anyway, it's basically pointless unless you want to look like an absolute tard while you're running around beating the crap out of other random school children. So the money balance is just off. There's no real challenge there. There is also this cool meter you've got up in the top left there, which is raised and lowered by doing honorable and dishonorable things. Dishonorable being attacking civilians, attacking people before you've probably challenged them, attacking them with weapons and what have you, but it doesn't really seem to have that much effect on the overall state of the game. Maybe it affects your ending, I don't know. But yeah, that's basically it. There's really nothing else to the game. There are police that run around, but they're practically not a threat in the slightest. And outside of that, there's nothing else to talk about. Sometimes you can beat a Bancho and they'll have beaten like 3 different Banchos off to the side, so you just automatically get them. And there is a sort of challenge where if you beat every Bancho or people that have beaten other Banchos and conquer every territory within the week, you'll get a endgame quest, because this is a lot like Dead Rising, where you can go through and come back and start a new game with all the stuff you gained from the previous game, all the itineraries, all the items, all the stats that you earned, right? But considering that the combat isn't particularly fun, hunting down itineraries isn't particularly fun, and I'd have to go through the game multiple times in order to find most people, I just don't see the appeal. It's not like Dead Rising, where there's a lot of combinations of weapons to find, where there's a lot of secrets to find, where there's a lot of survivors that have different and interesting circumstances, and you need to find an interesting way around to all of them in order to get them all to safety within a reasonable time frame. This just feels like a slog. So as a result, I don't particularly enjoy it at all. And it's pretty easy to see why they didn't get around to localizing all the ones that came after this one, which is a real shame, because you think that this would be a really cool concept. The ways that you could get multiple different school children coming together and beating the crap out of each other is interesting. There are so many ways you could play that story, have so many different kinds of personalities, bring across so many different kinds of culture from different parts of Japan, but the most that this does is, oh, I beat a couple of other people off to the side, you also dominate them now. But no. There were other entries in this series. There was like 2 more on the PSP, 1 more on the 3DS, and then there was a bloody Otome visual novel. Weird choice considering the subject matter, but okay. I mean, I'd be interested to see if, like, the one on the 3DS or the final one on the PSP improved on things a little bit, but yeah, to be honest with you, this game just isn't doing it for me at all. Stiff and uninteresting fighting, annoying tracking down of itineraries, a main story that doesn't really feel like it's going anywhere and has very one-dimensional characters, and absolutely nothing else to do in the world to make up for all these downsides, make this a really boring game in my personal opinion, and I can't bring myself to play that much more of it. So, yeah, not recommended. Unfortunate too. Neat idea, but that's pretty much all it's got going for it. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.
ほれほれ